A vulnerability doesn't have to be a bad thing. A vulnerability might mean you just really, really love your kids and you want the best for your kids. And maybe the best means going to UCLA or Harvard, right? And your kid's not going to get into Harvard. I can get your kid into Harvard and I'll pay for it. So I'm developing you. Do you like to drink? Do you cheat on your wife? Maybe you and I go out drinking, or we go to Vegas for the weekend, or we figure something out, something that you really like to do. And I can observe you over that period and look for that hook. Now, in 95% of cases, and internal studies have been done about this at the agency, 95% of the cases, the hook is money, right? You want money. I have money. I'll give you the money if you give me the information. It's just a contractual arrangement. Very simple. But the other 5% is kind of interesting. In some cases, it's excitement. You've watched Homeland. You've seen the James Bond movies. You want a piece of that excitement, that adrenaline rush of being clandestine. You'd be surprised, the people who are just doing it for the rush.
Yeah.
And then the others are ideology. You really, really love the United States and you want to do it just to be helpful to the United States. Or revenge. You do it because you got passed over for promotion and by God, you're going to screw your boss by volunteering to the Americans. But 95% of the time, it's simply cash for information.
Is this where you have a picture of them on the board and you're mapping out everything about them? Is this like where you're doing like analysis on someone and trying to really figure out profiling somebody?
Yes.
So
that's exactly what it is.
Can you walk us through this? So I'm imagining this would be, well, walk me through actually profiling someone, because this is so fascinating.
So every year, the CIA and every intelligence service begins the year with something called an operating directive. What is it that we want to collect this year? What is it that's going to provide the most help to the formulation of American foreign policy? Okay, so we're interested in China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, terrorism, proliferation, whatever. And you rank these things, right? There's tier 0, which means, war is imminent. Tier 1 is going to be China, Russia, Iran. Tier 2 might be, I'm making this up, Cuba, who knows, Venezuela, whatever. Down to tier 5, which is nobody cares about it. EU grain harvests, nobody cares. So with this in mind, as you go out to this cocktail party, what the operating directive is. You know what you need to collect on. So I go to a cocktail party and I say hi to you and you say hi to me and we shake hands and I hand you my card. I'm John Kiriakou from the American Embassy. You say, oh, I work at the port. I don't care about the port, but I say, oh my gosh, that sounds so interesting. What do you do at the port? Oh, I always love ports. It's always so exciting. Ships coming in, going out all over the world. It's very international. I'm just making all this up to engage you. And you say that there's a ship coming in from wherever, and it has a shipment of this chemical. I'm not a chemist. I don't know what that means. But when I go back to the embassy, I'm going to say, I met this guy. He appears to be this age. He's this tall. He's, this weight. He has brown eyes. He has brown hair. And he works at the port. Here's his name. Here's his title. Please let me know if you have anything in the files, which they likely will not. And I say, he mentioned that there's a ship coming in and has this chemical on it. And then they come back to me and they say, that's the precursor chemical for cocaine. So I say, aha, that I'm interested in. So I call you and I say, hey, it was so great meeting you the other day. I would hope that you would allow me to take you to dinner. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to say yes. And we get together for dinner. And I tell you how much I enjoyed our conversation. And this thing at the port is so fascinating. What do you like to do in your spare time? And you tell me something that you're interested in. I sort of gauge where you would like to see this relationship go. Maybe you mention, I've been at the port 10 years. I haven't been promoted in 10 years. Okay, that's important information for me. So I look for ways that I can help you. Maybe you would love, love, love to go to the United States on vacation. No problem. I can have the visa ready in the morning. Maybe, like I said, your wife is sick, or your child is sick, or your child's graduating from high school, wants to go to school in the States, or, you've Your car broke down. I mean, this happened to me once. Like, my car broke down. I've had this car for 10 years. I have literally no way to get to work. I'm happy to buy you a car if you give me an hour in your code room. So you try to quickly assess what it is this guy wants or needs and what information he might have access to that he'd be willing to give up.
Okay. So you're building rapport. There's so many avenues I want to get down. I like to sort of go like linear throughout things. So like, let's say, so you're at a cocktail party, you're at a networking event, you find somebody, you're talking. How do you, because even for myself, I'm one of those extroverts, introverts. I'm an extrovert when I want to be.
Yes.
And I can quickly, my battery just, I can be at a thing, I'd be like, abort, get me out. And I can literally be in a conversation with somebody, know that I should really talk to these people, but my face just says like, fuck off. How do you first, especially for the introverts sort of watching this, how do you first get yourself into a position where you can be somewhat interested, even though your brain's kind of saying like, I just don't want to talk to this person? What's up, legend? Real quick. You're listening to this podcast clearly because you're a big dreamer, you're a big thinker, and you want to achieve massive freaking things on this planet. What I know from my experience and interviewing so many successful people, one of the fastest ways to achieve what it is you want is to be in the environment with those who are like you and learning from people and where you want to get to. And that's why every single year I run an event called Dreamfest. This is our 5th year of doing it. We've had thousands and thousands of guests in the past. We've had wicked speakers. Last year we had Dan Martell, and this year we're even going bigger. And every year we bring the best speakers from the industry to help you level up your skill set and your mindset so you can create your dream life. It's 2 full days live on the Gold Coast here in Australia, but this year we're even going to have a virtual option. So head to the link in the description of this episode and you're going to find all the information you need. Get yourself a ticket, and I can't wait to see you in August at Dreamfest.
Listen, it's all an acting job.
Okay.
It really is. First of all, you cannot be a CIA operations officer and be an introvert.
Oh, really?
The two are incompatible with one another. You have to genuinely love doing this.
Okay.
I remember working for a guy. He was a fantastic station chief. He could have recruited me. I so enjoyed just being around him. He was funny and full of great stories and just a great leader, a manager. But he used to say, listen, you going to this party tonight? Yep, I'm going to the party. He said, I want you to show me 20 business cards tomorrow. And I'd say, okay. And so I would go from person to person to person, make sure I got 20 business cards or 25. And then he would say, not interested, not interested, not interested. This guy, yeah, we'd be interested in him. And so I would, take the 5 or the 10 out of the 20 that we might have operational interest in and call and say, hey, I'd love to take you to lunch. I had such a nice time, in our conversation the other day.
Okay. So you go back, before you'd have your next encounter, are you already starting to profile this person from what you already know? Or is it just, is the intention to set up the next encounter to start deepening the relationship and building more trust?
Yes and yes. So these things are not mutually exclusive. You've got to be working on multiple people at any given time, and you're going to be in different phases of that relationship at any given time. Maybe I just met you last night at a cocktail party, but this other guy I met 3 weeks ago, and we're already into the relationship. And there's another guy I met 6 months ago, and he and his wife are having dinner with my wife and me, in some little out of the way place so I can make him feel at ease. So you're going to be at different phases all at the same time, trying to keep 5, 6, 8 people straight in your mind. And then what you do to make that easier is I wouldn't even wait for the next day to write this up and send it to headquarters. I would go right from the dinner through a surveillance detection route back to the embassy, and I would write it up that night. And it didn't matter if I needed to be at the embassy until 1 o'clock in the morning. I was going to make sure that this information got back ASAP, so I didn't miss any of it.
Okay, so walk me through this MICE framework then. So, because what I've sort of got so far is, number 1, be extroverted, sometimes even if you've got to act it.
Yep.
Network with as many people, find who you're actually interested to pursue another conversation, develop a relationship. But what you're really looking for is, where is a gap? Where is a vulnerability they have? What is something that they really need? Because maybe they want it for pleasure, or maybe they want it to avoid suffering. So for the listeners, walk us through, what does MICE stand for, and why we use that?
MICE is not a CIA acronym.
Okay.
That's just been kind of made up by the public that's interested in this kind of thing.
Interesting.
Like I said, you can use, so many different tools to recruit somebody, with M, money, being the most important one. Now, if you're a guy who's got, access to the local Communist Party, that's moderately interesting to me. It's not terribly important. That might be worth a couple $1,000 a month. If you're going to give me Osama bin Laden's location, that's going to be worth $25 million. And I'm happy to give it to you in gold, in diamonds, in cash. We can set up a bank account for you. We can give it to you in land, in any country that you want to go to. We can work something out. But it's going to be different for every single person. It's going to be tailored. It's not unheard of for somebody to want the money, let's say, in diamonds. And so we've got a relationship with a guy who has access to the diamonds. I'm going to get, 30 different diamonds in all different sizes and colors and clarity and shape. And I'm going to give you the diamonds. And then if you need to cash in a diamond, here's a phone number that you call and you ask for Mike. And the person's going to say that Mike's not in right now. May I take a message? And you say, yeah, tell him that his Uncle Chuck says hello and he hopes to see him at Christmas. And that means meet me in 24 hours at the coffee shop at such and such an intersection. And an officer will show up with an envelope of cash. You cash in one of your diamonds, and then we just wait for the next encounter.
So I'm trying to imagine, so I guess everyone's different. Would it be right by saying, because I'm shocked that money is the number one.
Are you?
But I'm also not.
No.
Because
don't be.
As I was thinking, because
people are greedy bastards.
But am I right by saying that because probably the people CIA would be recruiting are probably not wealthy people?
Correct. They're mostly government employees.
Yeah, so they're all quite underpaid, so they would take cash.
Sure.
Yeah. So what about for someone who, and I was actually also thinking this, I'm like, am I motivated by money? I think to some degree, and what I was thinking is, it would come down to how much and in which time frame, because that's how like the mind works. Because if somebody said, I'll give you $1 million for doing this, if I get $1 million straight away, that's exciting. But if I got $1 million spread out over a year or something like that, I'd be like, I could make that, you know what I mean? So,
but if you're a government employee,
yeah,
in some third world country, making $10,000 or $12,000 a year, yeah, and I'm offering you $50,000, like right now. $50,000 is not a lot of money for the CIA, but it's life changing for you if you're, some Afghan functionary in the government or, from whatever country. It's life changing. You can pay off your entire family's debts. You can buy a piece of land.
Yeah. So what are the other ones then? So if you're trying to scope somebody out, like that person, money's not going to sway them. What would be my other approach?
Well, like I said, here early on in the relationship, you're trying to determine what the vulnerability is. Oftentimes, at least in the course of my career, it was medical care. I had a guy volunteer once because his wife had breast cancer. And we were living in a third world country, and the medical care was substandard. And this guy really loved his wife. And he's like, can you help her? Like, yeah, of course I can. We'll get her to the Mayo Clinic, and she'll have the best cancer treatment that's available anywhere. And that's what we did. Yeah.
I've heard people talk about, so you mentioned before, so ideology, coercion, I think people talk about, but you kind of ruled that one out. So you're saying it's completely, because I was thinking about it, I'm like, I think the only time you would ever really use is if you never wanted to ever have that person ever like you ever again.
Or look at it this way. If somebody tried to use coercion against me, I might say, okay, meet me at 3:00 in the morning at this intersection. And then I'd blow his brains out. Because if he's going to try to ruin my life and put my life and my freedom in jeopardy, he's going to die.
So talk to me about ideology then. Ideology and the ego. Like, how are you? I guess I'm trying to just sort of dissect. Like, if I'm going to sit down and read somebody, I guess you may have one approach, because you said before, I don't have a plan B or a C. So you're kind of going in, asking someone of something, but you must be so certain that that is going to work on them.
Well, Yes, but let me explain. So there is such a thing called a cold pitch. Cold pitches almost never, ever work. That is, I knock on your door. I say, I'm Bob from the CIA, and I know who you are, and I need this information from you. That never works. First of all, maybe I'm not Bob from the CIA. Maybe I'm Igor from the KGB. Or maybe I'm from your own police force and you're trying to entrap me. And so usually people run screaming from the room. They call the cops. They call their service. You get expelled. It's a big kerfuffle. So cold pitches don't work. So normally you work on a person for long enough that you know they're going to say yes to the pitch. And you know exactly what it is that they're going to want from you, right? You never go in unprepared. I had a station chief once tell me that in the 25 plus years he was at the CIA, he never had a target say no. And I can tell you, in my 15 years, I never had a target say no. Never. Because if they say no, you're in a heap of trouble. You're probably going to get expelled from that country. Because if they say no to you, they're probably going to report you to their version of the FBI, and then it's going to be an international incident. So you have to be 100% sure that they're just as into this as you are. And this is going to be a mutually beneficial relationship.
What are the fastest ways to deepen rapport and trust with someone? Because this is a thing that there's some people I can connect with and like instantly hit it off. And I think it just comes down to if we are naturally a similar personality type. And then there's some people I'm trying to connect with and I'm like, this is just like, they're just such an odd personality, or they're nothing like me. And I can feel this. It's just like, I can't go anywhere with this person. And obviously with, especially podcasting, there's a bunch of guests that I meet and I'm like, I stay really good friends with them. There's a few guests I meet, I'm like, I wouldn't talk to them outside of the episode. Is there a way around that internally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, you are an actor. You have to be an actor. And so even if you're not connecting with somebody, by God, you better make it look like you're connecting with them. I've told this story before where I was instructed to target a foreign diplomat. And so I did some light surveillance on him, and I learned that he would go to the same coffee shop every day, 7 days a week. 9 o'clock in the morning, he's at the coffee shop. So one Saturday, I went to his coffee shop and I bumped into him. And I was like, oh my gosh, what a small world. Hey, how are you? It's good to see you again. And I asked him if I could sit with him. So I sat with him and we sat and had a conversation and drank our coffee. And it became clear to me that in this conversation that he was gay. And he was deeply closeted.
How did you discover that?
I just had a gut feeling. And he made a complaint in that conversation that he had been passed over for promotion. And he made it sound like even if he wasn't gay, his superiors believed he was gay. And I thought, well, they know him better than I do. So if they think he's gay, he's probably gay. So I reported back, he's gay. And headquarters said, we want you to pretend that you're gay. And so I said, okay. So I call him back. We end up going to dinner. Then we go to lunch. Then we go to dinner again. And then I got 2 tickets for a show. And we went to the show and went out for sushi afterwards. And this went on for months. And he felt comfortable enough to complain to me about the system in his foreign ministry, the promotion system in his foreign ministry. I learned a lot. And I was reporting everything back to headquarters.
This was in Pakistan?
Oh, no. I can't say where it
say
was. So it wasn't in Pakistan, no. So it got to the point where, I've told this story before, and people have taken this to be a joke, and they've made memes and clips, and I'm speaking in a funny voice. It was very serious. He invited me to dinner at his apartment one night. So I went to his apartment, we had dinner, and then he leaned in to kiss me. And I was momentarily distracted. And so instinctively, I backed off like this. And he said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought you were gay. And I was like, oh my God, I just screwed this up. And I said, I am gay. I'm just not into hairy guys. And he's like, oh, I'm okay. okay. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I've led you on. He said, no, I think you're great. I'm glad we're friends. I'm like, oh my God, I think you're great too. But we're not going to be a couple. And it was cool because he respected me. And in the end, he gave me everything that I asked for because he was upset that he kept getting passed over for promotion. And he did it out of a sense of revenge. But he trusted me enough to give it to me. Okay.
And so my whole understanding with developing and building rapport, it's a lot of, mirror and matching and blah, blah, blah. Does it get any deeper than that of like developing, how can I develop deeper trust to the point where someone's like, I just feel like I can tell you anything. I feel like I've known you for so long.
Oh my God. You read psychology books in your spare time, and the guy mentions offhandedly that he likes fishing. You go learn how to fish well. Or he likes, cricket. You learn the intricacies of cricket. You have a favorite team. You can speak authoritatively about cricket and the history of cricket, or Broadway, or soccer, or whatever he happens to be interested in. You immerse yourself in this. A couple bosses I've had over the years have paid me some real compliments. One of them said, I was a brand new analyst. I had been on the job like 6 months. And I was actually offended by this at first because I misunderstood it. But my boss said, you would be a really terrific case officer. And I was like, why? I'm not a good enough analyst? Are you insulting me?
What's the difference between the two?
An analyst sits in a cubicle and thinks the big thoughts and writes papers.
And that's what you were doing most of?
In the beginning of my career.
Okay.
A case officer is recruiting spies to steal secrets. And so he said, no, what I mean is you're extroverted, you're a nice guy, and people like to be around you, which had never even occurred to me. But it planted a seed in my mind that maybe I will try operations. Maybe I would be good at operations. And it turned out that I was good at operations. And then later in my career, when I had proven myself as an effective operations officer, I recruited a guy who was so sensitive that I couldn't meet him in the country that I recruited him in. And so headquarters said, fly him back to Washington. You fly a different way back to Washington, and we'll meet him here. So we met him in a hotel here in Washington, and I invited my boss and a senior operations officer and the senior analyst to come to the hotel and just sit. And I mean, technically it was a debriefing, but what it really was a get to know you kind of session. And so he said, the source said, this is my first time in the United States, and I hope I have a couple of days built in because I'd like to go to New York, and I've never, seen a Broadway show. I'd love to see a Broadway show. And I said, oh, listen, Aida just opened on Broadway. I had just read a review in the New York Times. Aida just opened on Broadway. Elton John did all of the music. He scored it, and I forget who was the lead actress, and the New York Times raved about it. I said, I'll get us tickets. We'll go to New York together. And he said, tell me about this sport you have here, this baseball. What is this? I said, oh, we just got a team in Washington, the Washington Nationals. We're not very good, but it's fun, and we're going to play the Yankees, and the Yankees are a legendary team. I'll get us tickets. We'll go after dinner. And there was something else that we talked about in that meeting. And afterwards, my boss came to me, and he said, I have never seen someone speak so authoritatively on such disparate issues as you did today. And then you did a substantive debriefing. And I said, you know what it is? I love this job. That's what it is. I don't even feel like this is work. I couldn't wait to get to the office in the morning just to see what I had missed while I was sleeping. And so you either have it or you don't have it. And if you don't have it, cut your losses and go find something that's going to make you happy.
If you were to have to recruit me now into doing something based off like you barely even know me, or actually I don't know if you've scoped me out or anything, what vulnerabilities do you see in me? What would be your angle?
I'm not seeing any yet. You did mention that you went skiing recently, and so I would press you on that just to see where you've gone skiing, how talented you are at skiing. I'm actually not very good, but if you're around, there are a lot of places we could go skiing. Have you ever been to Park City? Have you ever been to, Steamboat Springs? There's a place in Vermont and, even in Western Pennsylvania, they're getting a ton of snow. I would explore that. You mentioned that you were in Florida the other day. I love Florida. Spring training has begun. If you don't know anything about baseball, it'd be fun to fly to Tampa and check out some of the spring training teams. I haven't detected a vulnerability, but I don't know you well enough yet. But I would certainly explore that in subsequent conversations.
So vulnerability to me, the word is kind of the connotation kind of feels like a weakness.
Yes,
but it can be both, is kind of what you're
exactly. That's a mistake to think of it just as a weakness. Think of it as an opening.
Yeah, because like what you were saying is, as soon as you mentioned the skiing, so snowboarding, but if you were to be like, I mean, you like snowboarding? Oh my God, we're going to Aspen and you could come. I'd be like,
exactly,
get out.
Exactly,
I'm in.
And I'd call a couple of my colleagues and I'd say, listen, I've got a guy I'm going to want to develop. He's a snowboarder. I don't snowboard. You guys do. I'm going to tell him we've got a thing going. We're going for the weekend. We happen to have this extra ticket. It's crazy. What a coincidence. And they'd be all in.
Okay, this is very interesting. And how could it relate back to, because this is where I'm trying to extract, everything CIA related is super fascinating. And I try to extract it, how can we use it practically in life? CIA have access to unlimited amounts of money and all of these things. Anything you need, like, we can get you into Harvard, blah, blah, blah.
That's the key right there.
The normal person doesn't have access to those things.
That's right.
So how might someone else go about that then?
Sure, that's a good question. So I have a friend who has never been in the CIA, has never expressed any interest in the CIA, but he has all the skills of a successful CIA officer. And where he has succeeded is as a fixer. So he's in a senior corporate position now, consulting position. And if you are a Hollywood studio and you want to make a movie in Cuba, you can't. We have sanctions on Cuba. But there's a village in Colombia that looks just like Havana. So he's going to do all the legwork and you're going to be able to make your movie in Colombia and make it look like Cuba. Or I'll give you a real life example that he brought me in on. Sacha Baron Cohen wanted to do a movie called Bruno. And my friend was not a Middle East expert, and I am. So he brought me in. Can you advise Sacha Baron Cohen on how to make this movie Bruno? I said, of course. So we have an initial meeting, and Sacha says, I want to film this section of the movie, this portion of the movie in the Middle East. And I said, great. I said, the Libyans are begging us. This was under Gaddafi. The Libyans are begging us to film movies there. They'll give us, tax-free. They'll pay all the expenses. He said, don't want to do it in Libya. He said, as a Jew, I'm just afraid of going to Libya. I'm afraid I'll never make it out. I just don't even want to consider Libya. And I said, okay, we could do it in Morocco, but Morocco has very unique architecture. So everybody's going to know that it's Morocco. He wanted to make it look like, Syria, Jordan, Israel. But everybody's they're going to look at these mud houses. They're going to say it's Morocco. That's Moroccan architecture. It's like, no, can't do that. He said, let's do it in Jordan. And I said, yeah, but we could do it in Jordan, but we're going to have to bring the Jordanian intelligence service in on it because they're one of the best services in the world and they'll be on us like white on rice. He said, nope, can't break cover, can't break character. Don't want to tell
because he's going in.
When he's in character, he lives the character.
Right.
He's a comedic genius. And I don't use the word genius lightly. I've only worked with a handful of people in my life that I would consider to be geniuses. He's a genius. So I said, that's a mistake. And I said, let's try Syria. We could do it in Syria. This is before the shit hit the fan in Syria.
I would imagine he would be frightened because Bruno he's a very out there gay guy.
Very out there gay guy.
And so he's going into countries where
it didn't work out.
Right.
So he said, I'm going to go to Newport Beach tomorrow and there's a Syrian consulate. I'll just go there. And I said, no. I said, let me do what you're paying me to do. I'll talk to the Syrian ambassador and we'll try to work this out. He calls me the next night. It was like midnight. My wife and I were up. I was reading a book And the phone rings. I was like, it's midnight. Who could be calling me at midnight? And I look, and it's Sacha Baron Cohen. And he says, he has a very thick British accent. He says, John, I think I fucked up, mate. And I said, don't tell me you went to the Syrian consulate at Newport Beach. And he said, as soon as he walked through the door, the guy came from behind the glass partition and said, I know who you are. I know what you do. You are not welcome in Syria.
Oh.
And I said, doggone it. All right. I said, let's try the Jordanians. So he said, no, let's just do it. We'll just go to Jordan and just do it. I said, I think this is a serious mistake. So what he wanted to do was he wanted to fly in bona fide terrorists. He said in our first conversation, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, and he wanted to show them pictures of men having like hardcore anal sex. And he wanted to ask them if this constituted torture and should these men be sent to Guantanamo. I said, that is a terrible idea. I said, first, just as a rule of thumb, you don't want to mess with the religious types.
Yeah.
I said, they'll kill you, they'll kill your crew, they'll go on to the street and they'll kill people who remind them of you. And I said, but there are bona fide terrorists who have retired. They're communists. And communism's not in anymore in Arab nationalism. So I said, these guys all live in Damascus. And we could fly them into Amman. But again, we're going to have to tell the Jordanians what we're doing. And he said, no. I said, Sacha, listen, if these bona fide terrorists are all flying to Jordan on the same day to come to your hotel room, they're going to come to the attention of the intelligence service. He said, won't do it. So he and a cameraman flew out a day before I did. And they land in Amman. And they get off the plane. And there's a guy standing there with a sign. And it says, Sacha Baron Cohen. And he says to the cameraman, John got us a car. I didn't get him any car. I'm not a secretary. I'm a script advisor. So he says, I'm Sacha Baron Cohen. They get in a car, big limousine. They're driving around. Finally, it occurs to him, this is kind of odd. And he says to the driver, where are we going? And the driver says, the Royal Palace. His Majesty's a big fan. And he says, these giant iron gates open up. They drive onto the palace grounds. And here is the king himself. And who is standing next to him but the director of the Jordanian intelligence service? So they get out of the car. And the king says, Sacha Baron Cohen, I am your biggest fan. Borat? I thought I was going to pee my pants, he says. This is the director of the Jordanian intelligence service. Anything you need, you call him. Welcome to Jordan. I said, I told you. Before you even landed, they knew what you were doing. They're that good.
And so your friend put that connection together.
Yes.
So you're saying, so one way of adding big value to people is being a master connector.
That's it. And that's what he is. He's a master connector and a fixer. Mission Impossible, 4, whatever it was, where Tom Cruise wants to do his own stunts on the outside of the Burj Khalifa, the biggest building in the world. You can't do that unless you're my friend who knows all the royal families of the United Arab Emirates and can get the royal family of Dubai to allow Tom Cruise to be on the outside of the 105th floor of the Burj Khalifa. Wow. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so it really pays to network, eh?
It's all about the networking.
You're making me want to take acting classes to become that 10% more extroverted.
I'll tell you something funny.
Yeah.
So last July, a dear friend of mine called me, and he's a Hollywood guy, and he said, "Listen, I wrote a movie, and this is what the movie's about, and I want you to be in my movie. I want you to act in the movie." And I said, "Oh, thank you. No, not interested." I said, "Thank you for thinking of me. I've never acted before. I'll be stiff and unconvincing, and I'm going to wreck your movie." And he said, "I thought of that. And I thought, you know what? Every day of your CIA career, you acted. And you pretended to be somebody that you weren't." I said, "Well, that's true, actually." And he said, "I actually wrote the role for you." I said, "Well, who else is in the movie?" And he names all these people, and they're all professional actors. And I said, all right, I'll do it. He sends me the script. I read the script. It's really good. Like I was surprised at how good it was, to the point where I introduced him to people that I know on Broadway, because I'm kind of a networking person too. And I said, this movie takes place all on one scene. It would make a fantastic off-Broadway show. So I fly to Mexico for the entire month of October. And all these actors fly in. And we spent a month making this movie. And in the end, I get home and I come home to my Screen Actors Guild membership card. I'm now a professional Hollywood actor.
There we go.
And I saw the first cut of the movie 2 weeks ago, and it's fantastic.
Can you tell me what it's called?
It's called Below World's End.
Below World's End.
It's going to come out in the spring. In the late spring. Yeah.
Cool.
So, you know, at the CIA, the culture is such that they kind of teach you that this job is so specific, there's nothing else that you can do. And that's just simply not true. There's a lot you can do.
That's what I'm learning. I didn't even know what the word espionage meant probably 2 years ago. And I've just been so fascinated on it all, because there's just, it's when I look at it, 'cause I teach a lot of just leadership. Like the whole purpose of my company is growing leaders. And when you talk about acting and all this, it's all just flexibility of behavior.
Yes.
It's like, how can you be so comfortable being a gay guy and then come back home and be a completely different person? It's like that flexibility of behavior to change your personality, to adapt to it, is just so fascinating.
Well, some people would say, including CIA psychiatrists, that this is an example of sociopathic tendencies.
That's what I was going to say to you, actually. What I've heard, that sociopaths, they're the ones who they really are picked. But my analysis on you is...
Not necessarily.
You're not that sociopathic.
I'm not a sociopath. I'm not. I mean, it's clear.
That's probably why you...
That's why I blew the whistle.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a sociopath. The CIA actively seeks to hire people with sociopathic tendencies.
So meaning they can dissociate from feelings.
Because they're the good guys. At least that's what we convince ourselves of. With that said, sociopaths, of course, will slip through the cracks because they can blow right through a polygraph exam and not react to it in any way. That can be dangerous, because usually it's those sociopaths, just like in the corporate world, who work their way to the top of the ladder on the backs of the people around them. But if you believe that you are the good guy and you're doing this for patriotic reasons, and you can flip that switch on and off on your personality, and you're a chameleon where you can adapt to these different situations, you're going to have a successful career in espionage.
I want to talk about Epstein. As an Australian, I mean, and also just in the world of gossip, I'm just not really involved. I see a lot of stuff, and I don't have really strong opinions on anything. But I obviously see all this Epstein stuff coming out. My other friend, Andrew Bustamante, he's also had a similar opinion to you. So you believe Epstein was a spy for Mossad?
I do.
Correct.
Strongly.
What gives you that impression that you're so certain on that?
Oh, it's a lot. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence. First of all, Ghislaine Maxwell's father was a prolific Mossad spy.
That's out there.
That's a historic fact. Yes, 100%. It stands to reason that she would have introduced him to the Mossad, or even her father would have introduced Epstein to Mossad. We don't have any idea where Epstein's money came from. This is a guy who never went to college, and yet he becomes the tax advisor to the richest man in Ohio and is referred by the Rothschild family? How in the world did that happen? That's not normal. Secondly, one of the things that you're taught early on in your CIA career would be the use of access agents. We all want to recruit the prime minister, okay? We're not going to recruit the prime minister. I don't care how good you are, how smart you are, how friendly you are. You're not going to recruit the prime minister. So you do the next best thing. You recruit the guy who has access to the prime minister. If you want to recruit Bill Clinton or Prince Andrew or Bill Gates or Ehud Barak, not Ehud Barak, that's an unusual example. I think he was just a pedophile. You're not going to recruit Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and Prince Andrew. So you recruit a guy who can elicit information from them. And then, remember, the Israelis do use coercion. Then you wire every room, including the bathrooms, for both audio and video, just in case you need to smash somebody over the head, like Peter Mandelson.
Who's that?
The British ambassador to Washington.
Oh, okay.
The former British ambassador. Now he's likely going to be charged with serious crimes.
I'm not aware of this. This is a recent thing that's just come out?
Epstein.
Oh, okay.
Over the last 3-4 weeks. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a long story. I don't think we have time.
Yeah.
But yeah, you recruit the next best guy.
So do you think Epstein was a Mossad agent or recruited as an asset from
I think
Mossad?
he was recruited as an asset.
Okay. So then makes me think, from your judgment, what do you think would have got him recruited? Just
money.
The lifestyle.
Money.
Hey, we're going to make you the richest guy.
Yeah. Sure.
Just go and do some shit. Yeah.
Private island, the widest townhouse in Manhattan.
I mean, that's pretty good, hey?
Yeah.
So my opinion on this is, when people ask me, it's the exact same playbook they use with Ellie Cohen, isn't it? So
on a bigger scale.
yeah. So I'm like, so you look at Ellie Cohen, for those not aware, go and watch The Spy on Netflix with your friend in it, Sacha Baron Cohen, which is a very, very serious role. That's fantastic.
It's a fascinating story.
It's really good.
Yeah.
But that was, I forget the year that happened, but there was, I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s, something like that, right?
It was like
A while away.
1958 to 1966.
Same playbook. We're going to put you in another country.
Yep.
We're going to make you an extremely wealthy businessman.
Yep.
Go throw lavish parties. Here's as much money as you need. Get connections everywhere. And then you get a feedback all day long.
But he did it for patriotic reasons.
Yes.
He did it. He volunteered repeatedly, but he was just a barber. That was his job. When he first volunteered to the Mossad, they were like, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm a barber, but I speak Arabic, like really good Arabic." And they said, "Yeah, thanks. We're not interested in recruiting barbers." And then he kept volunteering. And finally they said, "All right, can you speak in a Syrian accent?" And he could. Fluent, flawless Syrian Arabic. And they said, "Okay, we're going to send you to Damascus. We're going to give you money. You're a businessman. Have big lavish parties and invite everybody." It got to the point where he was going to imminently be named Deputy Defense Minister of Syria.
Wow.
And here he's an Israeli citizen and an undercover, like deep cover Mossad agent. And he made one single mistake. The way he was reporting back to Mossad was through something called a burst transmission. So what you do is you record all your information, and they give you a radio that's usually built in, I mean, back in the day, it would be built into a piece of furniture, like a dresser. So you record everything into the dresser, you hit a button, and it sends out a burst that lasts for a second. And it just sends all the information back to your handlers. It just so happens that there was a KGB officer in Damascus who said, this guy is just a little too slick. There's something wrong about him. And they were driving around his neighborhood with a listening device, and they detected the burst. And then they went back to the Syrians and they said, he's a spy, and it's probably for the Israelis. And they executed him. They hung him
Publicly,
in a public square.
But it's the same. They ran a very similar playbook, right?
Yeah,
with
very
the
much so.
Epstein thing.
Yes. And then you just work your way higher and higher and higher in society.
What I don't get is, how do you think he persuaded or influenced all of these people on his island to do all this fucked up shit?
Through his, well, no.
Or do you think they just, like, because
I think that they're perverts.
Do you think all of them are?
No.
Or do you think maybe, like, because here's what I would see, it could be a slippery slope. You're out there, 100 people, Bill Gates is there, all these famous celebrities. I think the chance of some of them being sickos, high chance. All of them being sickos?
No.
That's improbable.
I was on the Piers Morgan show the other day with David Boyce. David Boyce is one of the most important criminal defense attorneys in America. Represents Hillary Clinton, represented Virginia Giuffre. And he said that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of emails between Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton, between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, and there is zero evidence that either Bill Clinton or Donald Trump committed a crime. So not all of them are perverts. Not all of them implicated themselves. Most of them did, but not all of them. So, we learned a lot about the likes of Prince Andrew and, Sarah Ferguson and Peter Mandelson and Alan Dershowitz and other like household names in the United States and the UK. Most of it was hideous. Most of them won't be prosecuted for crimes because the statute of limitations has expired. But at least we now know what was going on at that island or in his giant mansion in Manhattan.
Do you think Epstein himself was a sicko, or that was perhaps something that was pushed on?
I think that as soon as they realized what his real vulnerabilities were, his vulnerabilities were an absolute love of money and pedophilia.
So do you think Mossad would have encouraged that then, or helped?
Oh, I think it's obvious that they did.
So you're saying
they set him up,
helped get underage kids to his island?
Oh, of course, absolutely.
So they have no morals.
Zero.
Is that Mossad, or is that an intelligence agency thing?
I think for the most part, most intelligence agencies have zero morals. I think that most intelligence agencies also will draw the line somewhere, like with child sex, for example. Mm-hmm. That would never happen at the CIA or at any other intelligence service that I'm aware of. And I think the Israelis were comfortable with it.
Do you think he actually killed himself?
Yes.
Have you seen these photos popping around of him walking the streets in Israel?
Yeah.
The problem is I can't believe anything online anymore.
No. I mean, they're clearly AI-generated photos. And I saw somebody talking the other day saying that they were able to identify it as having been created by Gemini AI.
Why do you think he killed himself and he wasn't killed?
Oh.
If he had all of these people blackmailed.
For a lot of reasons. First of all, his life was done. He was done. He was never going to see the light of day ever again. So do you want to spend the next 40 years in a dank prison? Because American prisons are like third world prisons. And I don't think he had the courage to go through life for the next 40 years in a maximum security prison. Number one. Number two, I want to address the reasons that people cite supporting their belief that he didn't kill himself. Number one, the guards all have their heads up their asses. The only qualifications to be a prison guard in the United States are you have to have the equivalent of a high school diploma. You don't even have to have the high school diploma, just the equivalent of the high school diploma. And no felony convictions. Number two, the cameras never work. In any prison.
Really?
They never work.
Why?
When I was in prison, because everybody has their heads up their asses working in these prisons. These are retards working in these prisons. And so, they're supposed to walk around every 15 minutes, make sure everything's okay. 8 minutes, walk around every 8 minutes if somebody's on suicide watch. These guys, they're either, masturbating in the guard booth or...
The guards?
Yeah. Or they're sound asleep in the guard booth. Or they're looking at porn, on the computer. They're not walking around doing their rounds. And there's nobody's going to tell them to get up and go do their rounds. That's the culture. They're morons. These are the dregs of society that are prison guards. Number one. Number two, the cameras never work. My job in prison was to be a janitor in the chapel. And every time there was a religious service scheduled, I would have to go into the chapel and break up all these guys having sex with one another. Why would they be having sex in the chapel? Because the cameras didn't work. And they knew they wouldn't be interrupted in there. Then people say, oh, if you look closely at the video, there's a little blip and the camera, yeah, because the cameras reset themselves every night at midnight and they record over the previous day's recording. So it's not like you stumbled onto some incredible revelation that, somebody hacked into the camera system. No. Mm-hmm. Every camera that works resets itself.
I'm fascinated about your experience in prison. So you're 15 years in CIA. You were you were leading on to bring down one of the biggest terrorists. I forget his name.
Abu Zubaydah.
One of the biggest guys. So you've been in probably the most unimaginable place on earth, having the most strangest, darkest conversations. How did you use all these skills when you first got to prison? What were your first...
I wrote a book about it.
Okay. What was your first 7 days like? How did you scope people out? What were you assessing?
I said to myself on day one, you're trained for this. Uh-huh. You've lived in far worse places than Loretto, Pennsylvania. You're going to end up running the prison. And so I wrote a book about this that won 2 literary awards.
What's your book called?
It's called Doing Time Like a Spy, How the CIA Taught Me to Survive and Thrive in Prison.
Cool.
And I outlined 20 life lessons that the CIA taught me and how I applied those life lessons to prison life. And the first thing you do is you make strategic alliances. So those alliances were with the neo-Nazis, with the Italians, with the Mexican drug cartels, and with the Nation of Islam, the black Muslims.
You made friends with all of them?
Every one of them.
Do they not hate each other, or is that
They
not
all
how it
hated each other, like to the point where it was potentially deadly.
So were they not like you because you're friends with all of them?
I was an independent operator. I didn't answer to anybody.
Did you get people try to come and fight you, persuade you?
Never. Never.
Did they know you were in CIA?
They all knew. Word got around.
So they just probably wouldn't try to fuck with you.
Nobody did. A couple of times people did, and they paid dearly for it.
What did you do to them?
Well, one of the rules in my book is always let others do your dirty work. I'll give you an example. There was a serial killer in my housing unit. For reasons that I will never understand, he took a liking to me. And he was constantly seeking my approval. So, like, he would say things like, "Hey, John, I saved you a seat in the TV room for the football game." I'd say, "Thanks, Truck." We called him Truck because he was a long-distance truck driver, and he was murdering prostitutes along his truck route. "John, hey, there's a new classic rock station, 1610 AM. "Thanks, Truck." Well, there was another guy in the prison we used to call Cat in the Hat because he had an oddly elongated head, and he looked like the Cat in the Hat. So he wanted to move into my cell. And we had a rule in our cell: no pedophiles, right? So I said, "Are you a pedophile?" He said, "No." I said, "What's your crime?" He said, "Murder for hire." I said, "I'm not sure I like that much better than pedophiles. What were the circumstances?" And he said, "Oh, I was $100,000 in debt, and I took out an insurance policy on my business partner, and I hired a hitman to kill my business partner so I could cash in the..." I said, "Well, that's fucked up. I don't want you sleeping next to me, in the cell." He was angry. One day...
Because you didn't let him in.
I didn't let him in. One day, CNN came to the prison to interview me, and I got called down to the lieutenant's office because the CNN crew had come to the prison. So they say, "Kiriakou, lieutenant's office." Well, usually people called to the lieutenant's office are being called down to rat and to inform on other people. But everybody knew CNN was coming to interview me that day. Anyway, I'm sitting next to Truck in the TV room. Cat in a Hat is standing not 3 feet away from me, but he doesn't realize I'm sitting directly behind him. And he says to a guy next to him, "Did you hear Kiriakou got called down to the lieutenant's office?" He says, "That guy's a fucking rat. He went down there to rat us all out." And I didn't react in any way. And Truck said, "Did you hear that fucking guy? He just called you a rat." And I said, "An hour ago, I heard him call you a pedophile." Which I had completely made up. Without saying a word, Truck got up and beat him to within an inch of his life. He was in the hospital for 6 weeks. Truck got 5 years added to his sentence, which was 40 years. And they sent him to a higher security prison. Well, I made sure that Cat in the Hat heard why he had gotten such a beating. And when he came back from the hospital after 6 weeks, he came up to me and he said, with his head down, "I'm so sorry I called you a rat. I should never have said anything. I apologize." And I said, "I'm going to tell you one thing, and then I'm never going to say anything again. If I ever hear my name cross your lips ever again, you're dead. Understand?" And he said, "Yes." So nobody fucked with me in prison.
So I want to get your book. I didn't know you had that. That's amazing. You don't have any hard copies around.
I don't, but I'll tell you what, it's done so well that Simon & Schuster just came out with a second edition.
Oh, amazing. I'm gonna get my hands on it. So how can, because as you're saying all that, the number one thing I'm feeling in my body is how much confidence you have to go into those situations. And I imagine a lot of people watching this could apply that to their life. Like maybe they're just starting a new job.
Yes.
Or they're, I don't know, new friend group or whatever it might be. And they're in a situation where they're like, I feel like uncomfortable here.
Yes.
What's the first kind of go-to to actually come back
Have confidence in yourself. I worked with a guy. When I left the agency, this guy came up to me, who I liked. He was kind of an assistant. He wasn't an ops officer, but he shook my hand. He said, I'm going to miss you. It's been fun working with you. I said, oh, you're great. I'm going to miss you too. Genuinely good guy. And he said, I want to tell you how much I admire you. And I said, oh, thank you. It's so nice of you to say. He said, I admire you because out of everybody I've met here, you're the only one who's not afraid of anybody. And I said, yeah, you know what? I said, I'm not afraid of anybody. And I don't really know why that is. When I got back from Pakistan, even my mother said to me, were you afraid, like breaking down these doors and grabbing these Al-Qaeda people? And I said, no. I said, I think it's because I was so busy that I just didn't have time to really process the emotion of fear. I just didn't think about it. But then in retrospect, I don't know, maybe there's just some switch in my brain that never activated a sense of fear. I don't really have an explanation for it.
So even in the beginning, your first job or anything like that, there was never a sense of, shit, this could go wrong?
No. I have been intimidated a couple of times.
On the job?
Yeah, like I had been on the job 8 months. August 2nd, 1990. I get to the office. Iraq has just invaded Kuwait. I get to the office early, and my boss says, don't take your jacket off. We're going to the White House. I had never been to the White House before. We get in a car, drive to the White House. A Marine escorts us into the Oval Office. It's the president, the vice president, the national security advisor, the CIA director, my boss, and me.
Who was the president then?
George H.W. Bush. We all sit down, and the president says, well, now what do we do? And then everybody turns and looks at me. I was 25 years old. And I'm looking at him like, and then it took me a second like, yes. Well, Mr. President, as you know, Iraqi troops crossed the border at 2 o'clock this morning. They've taken the whole of Kuwait. The royal family has fled to Saudi Arabia, et cetera, et cetera. I was intimidated. I'd never met a president before, And not only am I meeting the president and the vice president and the CIA director and the national security advisor, but they're asking for my advice on issues of war and peace. I'm 25 years old.